Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording live stream of Hearthstone. Today is Friday, April 5th. So the expansion is nearly upon us, the Rise of the Shadows expansion. So yesterday I did a special live stream and now I've released individual videos in which I was able to show all of the Rise of the Shadow cards. It's a pretty decent expansion. It seems pretty heavily focused on making Mage look good. So there's all Druid cards, or all Hunter cards, all Mage cards, all neutral cards revealed. Videos that came out earlier this morning, except for one that I misscheduled and just put out a few minutes ago. So we're getting there, either Tuesday or Thursday. We do have this card from the new expansion that you could play right now. At the end of your turn, cast a spell you've cast this turn. It's, I guess, cast one random spell that you cast this turn, not cast every spell, so that might limit it somewhat. But we're not to the point where we can open any packs or anything, and so that'll be the next big thing, either Tuesday or Thursday. I imagine maybe Tuesday. So we just have to do standard covering the news today. We're gonna have a standard stream like that, and we're just gonna get the daily quest done, and that should be that. So what do we actually need to do? Damage 65 things and play Warcraft class cards. Easy enough. So we're just gonna play a little ranked Warlock, and I think we kind of have to play ranked regardless of whether it's going to get us higher or lower. What we've got to hope is, with the continued improvements of the automatic generated decks, and with HS Replay pointing me in more of a direction towards what I'm supposed to be doing, as far as what cards I should craft with Dust. I am hoping, I guess is the right term. I'm just hoping that I'll continuously move to a closer rank. If rank 12 is the rank I should be at, then we should be fine. Now I stayed up kind of late streaming last night, so we're starting late this night, but frankly at this point, in any claims of consistency on my part on streaming is a joke, and also it's just daylight savings time. Like, I should straight up just say I don't follow daylight savings time. So spring forward, don't follow it. Spring back, don't follow it. Gonna use it as an excuse for every single time to not actually be on time. There's just no consistency with Insomnia, frankly. The only way I could be consistent is if I started streaming somewhere around midnight or 1 in my time zone, which I'm always awake at midnight or 1. I could always start exactly at midnight or 1, but nobody would be around to watch that. So that's kind of pointless. I'm gonna do this and this. And I'm gonna take like 1 damage here and, well, 3 damage there. Hopefully that's the right thing. I'm still playing this game on my phone, or to more accurately saying, I'm not playing this game on my phone, called Destiny Child. It's a Korean gachapon style game where you collect a bunch of anime girls for the most part, although there are a few weird exceptions to that, because there are a couple that are actually guys. So what I want to do, I'm just going to end the turn here. I'm just going to play it slow. Excuse Excuse me. Sorry. I recognized in the middle of after streaming and breaking up all the videos yesterday, like before and after every stream, there was me either coughing or burping or making some foul sound directly into the microphone, and I don't know how much of that is picked up or how much of that irritates people. I've never had anybody complain about it, but that's it. So, but as far as Destiny's Child, it's on the stamina system, so theoretically you should be running. I should be running low on stamina at some point, but
in the light's name.
I kinda am not. So that's weird.
Free me.
Let's start playing now. So several times now, 3 times I've left it running just online. I'm getting a little concerned that I might just burn in the screen into my LCD phone. Speaking of phones, so yeah, I've got it like running right now as I have it in a split screen mode on Android, so I can see the chat, and I hope the chat will actually update when it's in split screen mode. It should. And it's just running and playing itself, which is fine. Like, that's kind of what you kind of need to do. I have about 1,000 stamina, and each fight costs about 10. So it needs to go through like 100 battles before I can even eliminate all the extra stamina I've earned as rewards, so I can get down below what is my max level of stamina, so that I'm earning more of that.
Your magic shall not save you.
Let's get that. 13. For a game, it still is alright, but I would argue that maybe now 2 days into it, that there's a certain point where you kind of run out of things to do. And it is kind of grindy. There's a lot of, I think, grinding that is going to come back into it later on, where I'm almost to the point where my first 5 heroes are at their max level, so I think I'm going to have to put them to the side and say stop playing with the first 5 because they're maxed out, and let's start playing with the next 5, and then let's start playing with the next 5, and let's start playing with the next 5. But that's what I wanted with Tower of Sabers, is the ability to collect every single character and upgrade it to the max level and unlock everything. And this game has a lot more skins and things that you can unlock. And so, yeah. In the long run, I imagine you're going to collect a lot of 1-star out of the 5-star system, which I think it's up to 5-star. It might actually be up to
in the light's name.
well, it might be as low as up to 6 stars actually. But yeah, I think you're gonna get a lot of 1-star heroes that you didn't dissolve into what they call Onyx, and then you're gonna use that Onyx to upgrade your top tier characters. And then you're gonna have to go get more 1-star things and dissolve them again, and you're just gonna constantly be in the cycle of churning and processing these heroes into the Onyx to upgrade the ones you're interested in. Yeah, I played poorly here.
Someone call for the doctor.
As far as Castlevania Lord of Shadows Mirror of Fate, I didn't have any time to work on that, so I haven't moved any I haven't played that at all, which is a shame because it still is holding up the Alt-Tab button. I don't know why a game would stop Alt-Tab from working, and I assume it is this game. Otherwise, I've got some other problem going on with my keyboard. And it's not like the battery. The battery says it's good. So that's of slight concern. I don't know if there's any major, actually, video game news that there is really worth mentioning either. There's just a bunch of small stories. Nothing has been on my radar because I've just been streaming. And I guess inherently there is a point to take from that if I was every day streaming Hearthstone and trying just to be a Hearthstone streamer, which would be a really bad mistake at this point, it would I would definitely not be up to date with any of the with the news or what's going on. There's also, let's see, what else was I gonna say? With the new Hearthstone expansion, there are 3 card backs, although for logging in on a PC, logging in on an Android phone, and logging in on an iOS device, which is actually asking quite a lot, because I think there's very few people that have all 3, because PC does not, I think in this case, include a Mac OS Apple device. It would have to be like a Windows PC, I'm sure. So I'm gonna have to see if I can convince somebody I know that has an iPhone to log into my Hearthstone account, which is going to be really difficult because of 2-factor authentication, just so I can get a card back, which is kind of silly. And since I've logged in with a Samsung Galaxy device, I've already gotten 1 card back because I logged in with a phone. So they're kind of going back to the well. I'm not even sure what that really builds as a reason. Like, finally pull this guy back out and this guy's not really playing much, so I don't know if he's playing a strategy or what. I only need to do a little bit more damage, and then I could potentially do 8 here if I can gamble. As far as the new cards that are coming in the expansion, there's lackey cards that are still a bit of a question mark, and that's kind of it. Like, it doesn't really feel like there's too much other things. Let's see.
Someone call for the doctor.
I'm just gonna heal this guy. No real crazy strategies, but a couple of crazy cards. Let's just start going through the news. We've got not a ton. Oh man, I could have really used that silence card at some point there. I lost both of my silence cards. I shouldn't have done that. That was
Not
stupid of me.
are lost.
So So what do we want to do? I want to do this and
Time's up.
this and this and that.
Job's done.
I guess. TechRaptor has an article here. Breach developer QC game shuts down. I'm not sure what Breach is as far as a game. That seems like that's a pretty old game. Apparently QC Games is the second studio that officially shut down this year. I did think that 2019 would be the year of games being shut down, and I'm still kind of looking here. What's interesting here is that they apparently type in quick take every time and they miss the queue. There's literally no queue in that on TechRaptor. So much for proofreading. So yeah, Breach clearly not a successful game. I guess that's about all you can really say.
Why do you call? Mushroom. Job's done.
I guess we'll leave it at that. I guess in general, like, we'll try and have a shorter experience anyways. Let's just try to burn through the news. GameIndustry.biz has an article. Minecraft on PC surpasses 30 million in sales. In total, all editions of the game combined have sold 150 million, so that would be to say that Minecraft's Java edition has passed 30 million sales, so it's still going well.
Played.
He's got so many cards. Well, there goes my win streak. And we're gonna have to play a couple more games to play all the Warlock class cards, because there isn't a ton there. I would have probably won if I'd played that better. We've got a game on Steam called Alwyn's Adventure. Looks like it's a Game Boy-esque color looking game. I had a fan on the chat for a few weeks talking about how much he loved Game Boy games. And unfortunately I was constantly saying, well, I hate the look of Game Boy games, and there's no reason to make a game that looks like it's just 4 colors of gray, 4 shades of gray, which is all that Game Boy could do. And unfortunately this is still that kind of idea. $1.79 discounted. Come back when you have widescreen. Come back when I can play the game in full color. Like, I would be alright if somebody made a game that was very inspired by a Game Boy game, but there's nothing really great in Game Boy games. They were always limited, they were always short, they were always bad. The controls and the processing speed in the Game Boy were not good. Let's just be honest here. You can have something like a 2D Legend of Zelda game, a 2D platforming game, but just make it full color, and if you want to have a shader in it where you can play it as a Game Boy game, that's fine. In fact, you could probably play any number of great games on Steam in black and white if you just turn the color resolution off on your TV. Would be about the easiest way to do that. Just go into color saturation and turn everything down. Turn the red, the green, and the blue down. You'll have black and white at that point. If you have a good enough TV that would let you do that. But when you come from the concept, when you start making a game saying it's going to be a 4:3 ratio, it's going to be square, it's going to be tiny 8-bit pixel things. That's not something that inspires me to really believe that there's a good game here, and Alwyn's Adventure is just a great example of that. I'm just not even confident enough to put it in the follow list. Next we have a game on Steam that's just a bunch of Asian characters. It looks like it's a PUBG ripoff. Low effort game. Seems like it has vehicles and characters, and it's all just asset flipped. English not supported for $7.99. And it's a Chinese game as far as the language. Yep. So nothing to really say there, other than it definitely feels like we weren't seeing any Chinese games at all until somewhat recently. I'm just gonna play this. There's kind of no reason not to play it. Game of Sutra has an article. Microsoft's new Windows 10 game bar update takes a cue from NVIDIA and Discord. Well, there might be some more stories around this. It includes video capturing, sharing, cross-platform chat with Xbox players, and a new volume and performance controls. I still doubt many people will use the game bar, but it's, I suppose, there. Draw 3 cards.
My hand is too full.
Darn it.
Your magic shall not save you.
Job done.
I'm not playing very well. I should just play all the Warlock cards. At the very least.
Takari kill test buttons.
Alright. Play this. Play this. Play
Mage.
this.
Job's done.
And lose. Yeah, I've failed to play at least 3 cards here. Need to wake up a little bit more and keep a focus here. Not only am I losing, I'm not accomplishing my goal.
Takari kill test buttons.
See, this would be great though, actually, if I survive 1 turn and I got the light spawn, because then I could do 1 damage and have all of these guys healed by his ability, which would puff up my guy really well. But that's not gonna happen, so let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's attack here. Let's
Mage.
attack here. Let's attack here. And then new turn. Maybe I could have taken this guy out, but I doubt it. At least I played the cards. But down I go in the rank play. Well, I'm not feeling particularly confident right now in playing Warlock, so I'm going to move up to casual and not fall down any further. Next, we have a game on Steam called Frame Dragon's Odyssey. Now, this looks like an RPG game, but a game that's not made in RPG Maker. It looks a lot like a Super NES RPG game with some decent animation on it. I've never heard of this publisher or this developer, but I'm actually willing to give this one a chance and put it on the follow list. It's $11.69 discounted. It's English and Japanese. I think this is a real effort at the product, which is weird because even now, like, most Japanese developers would not do a 2D RPG because of so much flooding of the RPG Maker well, issue. Like, that's RPG Maker games in general just flooding the market, which I guess that goes to show that there is damage that is being done to the video game industry by so many low effort games being given some prevalency. I don't know if this almost becomes a religious debate about whether it is Valve's job or moral obligation to curate its store to help the industry or not. In the longer run, I think Japanese developers could very easily, if they wanted to make 18-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit RPG games that are good, they probably could perfectly well do that without any real issue. Man, so much of this just revolves around
Someone call for the doctor. It's playtime. It's playtime. Job's done.
Yeah, so much of this revolves around having the light spawn on in your hand. Game of Citra has a blog, a deep dive into Steam's discovery queue. This is probably a blog that really is in fact just a complaint about small indie developers not getting promoted in the discovery queue. They got some numbers here that were like, they looked at a bunch of discovery queues, and I assume it's all on one account, and 41.8% of the games that were recommended were because they were popular, and 37.9% were recommended because they had positive user reviews, and 6.8% were to be just to see if you might be interested in it, which is an interesting idea, certainly, to just say, hey, 6.8% of the time we're gonna just throw you a random game and see if you might be interested in something new. Then 5.4% of it is because it's new on Steam, so you get more random games than you get games that are just new. 3.9% are because it has a high Metacritic score, and 3.1% is because it's on sale, and only 1%, which seems almost like a hard limiter, of the games were recommended because they were a top seller. So there does kind of seem like there is a list limitation there of they don't really care about top sellers or promoting those in the discovery queue. I don't think that Valve does. I think the discovery queue is more about showing you other games. If it's a top seller, it will be on the front page, and the front page is really what I'm going to post the top sellers as far as Steam. Let's see if there's anything else. The percentage of games coming soon that were on the Discover queue, according to this blog, were 0.3%, so only 2 games. The games that were pre-purchasable, labeled pre-purchase, were 2.7%. And the games that were early access were 16.2%, and then 80.8% were fully launched. And arguably, I guess that's fine, but I would argue that there's still probably way too many early access games on Steam. But maybe the Discover queue doesn't show early access games that often, and I'm just one of the few people that actually sees all the early access games because I see them as I look at games as soon as they're put on Steam. So there might be a considerable amount of games that are only in early access for a week or two, and I just never see it. And seems like there's some more breakdowns of numbers here. This does seem to be more thought through and numerical than just a complaint about the Discover queue in general. It goes down to break down the tags that they saw in their research. The biggest tags are indie, action, adventure, RPG, single player, and then it jumps way down from 129 games being tagged super single player to 78 games being tagged great soundtrack, and then it goes steadily down to the single digits, where there's 9 games had local co-op and like 2 games were tagged fantasy. So a lot of these games I think aren't actually tagged very much. But I guess if you want to see games on the Discover queue, at least on their account had been labeled one that liked indie games, action games, adventure games, RPG games, and single player games. I don't know if this means that's going to be for everybody's account, since this is all just deep learning, computer cloud AI stuff. Like, I imagine what I'm not seeing here, and what you would see almost certainly, is if you had ever favorited, wishlist, or looked at a visual novel, you would have seen a visual novel tag in some of this. And there's literally, they saw no visual novels at all. Whereas when I look at the Discover queue, there's a decent amount of visual novels in them. Yeah. So I think there very well may just be a flipped switch hard programmed into it that says, hey, if this guy's ever looked at a visual novel whatsoever, start showing them visual novels and all visual novels, because we don't know what that really means or how to break that down any differently. But there are other tags, like there's a dark tag, and there are dark visual novels, horror visual novels, scary visual novels, mystery visual novels, and then there are romantic visual novels, and then there are just slice of life visual novels.
What to do?
So I'm not sure how well their algorithm would differentiate that. Let's see. There's a mention of negative reviews. In my experience, negative reviews don't affect the Discover queue at all. So that you still get them recommended to you. You just see, oh well, it has negative reviews. Is that something I really want to deal with? What does this one do? Random mage spell. Speaking of negative reviews, people are review bombing, I guess, the existing Steam Borderlands games because of Steam Borderlands 3 being on the Epic Store. This will be interesting to see if that gets tagged as a review bomb or not, because it kind of would be in Valve's interest to say, no, we're not going to classify that as a review bomb, or an off-topic review bomb is what they were calling them, because actually this is this time that is an issue that affects your experience. It would be really hard for Valve to make that argument based on what they've said in the past, and they should have just been silent. And I was saying a couple weeks ago that I imagine they almost will never actually tag anything as an off-topic review bomb again, and they were just doing it for the game Devotion because it was clearly obvious that it was Japanese, the Japanese government review bombing them, and they didn't like that. Not the Japanese government, the Chinese government. Did I say Japanese? I don't even know. I'm half asleep here. But I wouldn't. If I was Valve, I'd just stay very silent on these review bombs, and we'll probably start seeing some stories of like, hey, how come Valve isn't labeling this as an off-topic review bomb? And it'll probably just end at that, because it's so blatant and obvious why Valve wouldn't do that. And maybe Valve will eventually get pushed into having to actually label them as that. Meanwhile, still kind of in a weird position with Borderlands, because if you are an owner of Borderlands 1 and 2 and the pre-sequel on Steam, you've got more than 6 months of Borderlands you could be playing right now. So, like, you could just go back and play the old games and wait it out. I did hear official word, not directly, but I heard through other reporters that Gearbox did specifically say, yes, it was 2K's decision, that 2K's in charge of all publishing decisions, and so they went with the 2K with the Epic Store exclusivity deal. Also, I guess it's worth mentioning that since Borderlands 3 is using the Unreal Engine, I believe for the first time, that means that they won't have to pay as much in licensing fees for the Unreal Engine for at least the sales from the Epic Store, so they're gonna make a few more dollars for every sale. The question should be asked though is, while these are percentages, it's not gonna be millions of dollars in difference, because even if you are getting a slightly better cut, let's say even 15% better cut, when you combine not having to pay for the Unreal license per that one game that's sold, it's just going to be 15% on potentially a $100 game, so it'll be like 15 extra dollars per game. Either way, you still would have been making at least $70-80 on every sale. And when you get back to Steam and you're having to get a smaller cut in a much bigger pond, you're going to have a lot more sales to make up the difference. Although a lot of that numbers is highly secret, so I'm not sure how much a difference that really changes anything. I think even the management and the publishers don't really know, and that's kind of the problem, is that they see, oh, well, we'll be saving this percentage, but they don't know what the difference in sales will be because you're doing an exclusivity deal. The worst case scenario here that almost nobody wants to talk about is because of the Epic Store exclusivity for Borderlands 3 in particular, 2K may say there weren't enough sales and there wasn't enough profit for any more Borderlands games. We're just canceling the series and we're not making any more. That puts Gearbox in trouble because they have no intellectual property that they own, really. That kills a beloved series just because of bad management, and that would just be about the worst case scenario you could possibly have. But this is something that certainly has happened. Dead Space 3, great example. They turned a single-person horror game into a co-op action shooter. They tied it, I believe, to their own launcher, and then they came out and said it didn't sell enough for us to ever make a Dead Space 4. So they hamstrung it from the word go and then killed it because of bad management. And that would really suck for Borderlands. It would really suck for any of the games that were good, but it has happened before. But what can I say? I'm not going to suddenly turn pro-developer to the point where I'm anti-consumer and tell people, well, you should just buy Borderlands 3 on the Epic Store ever. Anyways, I think boycotting the Epic Store is at very least the right thing to do. Maybe never buying the game at all might be the right thing to do, although I cannot commit to doing that, certainly. Like, I'll fully admit I'm not going to do that. But, yeah. Moving on, we have a game on Steam, Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission. This is the card game. Here, if we skip to this trailer, it's a Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like straight up Yu-Gi-Oh! Just for Dragon Ball. And I guess that really doesn't matter too much because I'm pretty sure Dragon Ball and Yu-Gi-Oh! Are both licensed by Bandai Namco, and that probably doesn't. I think they may have been in the same Shonen Jump manga like series. None of these characters look familiar. They look like new characters. It's already rated very positively. It's $59.99. It's single player with online multiplayer. It doesn't have any in-game additions, so it seems like it's one of those Yu-Gi-Oh-esque card games where, while there are a couple bits of DLC to knock this up to nearly $100, but this seems like it's just the music too. Alright, well, so $60 you get the full game. It's rated very positively. I could see this, yeah. Maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! Is dead and they're right to say let's lean on a more recognizable franchise. One thing I would say though is that Dragon Ball in particular is kind of too similar in all of its characters. Like, there are way too many Saiyans in Dragon Ball and way too few other kind of aliens and creatures. Compared to Hearthstone, for example, you've got a whole class of humans, but you've also got a whole class of demons and monsters and dragons and mechs and everything else you can imagine. And there's just not that much variety in Dragon Ball. There's basically humans, Saiyans, and androids, and a few aliens that are very unique. Like, there's only one or two of that species in existence. So I don't know how you would have a lot of variety in the cards. But I'll put it in the follow list and keep an eye on it. It's fair enough to do that.
Mushroom power!
Okay. So.
Free me! Free me!
Excuse me. Gamma Sutra has an article. Get a job. Frictional Games is hiring an audio lead / sound designer. This is in Malmo, Sweden. That's M-A-I-M-O with 2 dots on top of it, Sweden. While I was scheduling videos last night, I was watching this comedy murder mystery series called Fallet, F-A-L-L-E-T, where it's a murder in a small town in Sweden, and there's a British and Swedish officer that's trying to investigate the murders, and they're constantly screwing up. The female officer is super butch and always shoots people. And he keeps shooting innocent bystanders, and the British guy is a real mama's boy and a wimp. So it seems slightly fun, but I wasn't paying a lot of attention, frankly. I've fallen behind on watching a lot of YouTube and just watching the things I was watching because of this new game, Destiny Child. It's just called Destiny Child. So yeah, there's a lot of work I'm gonna need to do probably over the weekend as far as just catching up on things or deciding, hey, I don't really need to watch that. So that's the Americas account done. Let's just move forward. We may have some games left over too, so I may just focus on the news. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Microsoft responds to sexual harassment allegations within the company. Now, Microsoft is a huge company, so I'm not surprised if this hasn't happened many times. I've never heard any allegations of it being widespread or okay, so here's the thing you get for logging in via PC, but I couldn't actually find that card back. I have a challenge a friend on the European account. So, Machine Dreams, where is this card back? It's way over here. So, yeah, we can do that, I guess. And we'll re-roll this and win 3 with the Hunter Mage. And that's all I guess I'm really going to be able to do unless somebody hops on this. So, custom Hunter, play rank, go. Apparently there was a email chain, a long email chain that began circulating March 20th. Said chain has apparently expanded to women across the company, sharing stories of inappropriate work behavior, ranging from threats for not providing sexual favors to flat-out discrimination in their career advancement. According to the women, after reporting their experiences to Human Resources, they apparently often received hostile and non-committal responses to their complaints.
Let's the hunt begin.
Let's see. Game developers should be aware that some of the allegations do relate to the core Xbox team. One employee described their experience on Xbox as, we did a roundtable with the women when I was in the Xbox core team, and every woman except for one had been called a bitch at work. Okay. Before people say it's just an Xbox thing, as I've heard that's a dismissive way too many times within Microsoft. The other engineering organizations where my experiences happened were Windows and Azure. This is a Microsoft thing, a common one. Alright, well, one thing I can testify to, it's a well-known issue, is that Microsoft for a very long time had stack ranking as a priority, which was basically you would be given 5 people under you as a manager, and you would have to rank them as best to worst, and the worst were usually demoted or fired, and the best pretty much weren't promoted or done anything else with it. And so there's just like always a loser, and it creates this constant how would you best describe it, hostility and aggression and competition inside of Microsoft. I think they've finally gotten rid of stack ranking, or starting to get rid of stack ranking. Let's see. And I guess I could say from my own experience, as somebody who's worked jobs with a lot of women in them, and I've certainly never thought to myself that every single woman that was my coworker was being called the B word at some point by some professional. That is unacceptable. In the same way that you really shouldn't be calling people a-holes or any of the bigger words. I think you could probably get away with jerk. That's probably as much as you could say. But even that, maybe if you're going for pure professionalism, you actually describe behaviors and not just generalization insults. You say this person is uncooperative, they're not a team player, they're hostile, they're unkempt, they're late. Talk about actual actions. That gets a lot more benefit. As far as HRs are usually useless in every company, so that's not surprising in any way that would be the case. So assuming what is being said is true, which unfortunately it has become, the Me Too era has done one thing for one side, for some people, and the exact opposite thing for others. It has gotten to a point where a lot of what people seem to think is sexual harassment wouldn't have been considered sexual harassment a year ago or 2 years ago when these events actually happened, and they weren't brought up until women in particular have been encouraged to reevaluate their life and look at it from this new perspective. This everything is sexist, everything is harassment, everything is oppression, way of looking at things that doesn't come in line with reality enough to make sense. But it's straight example. Being called the B word was inappropriate 10 years ago. It was inappropriate 30 years ago. It was never appropriate. These allegations should be looked into. They should be worked on. Does it change how Microsoft as an Xbox provider affects things? Not really. Microsoft's doing pretty fine in its Xbox things. Microsoft's doing alright in everything else it does. It's not perhaps doing as good as it could with Xbox updates and things like that. I think that there has probably just been for a very long time a culture of highly competitiveness that does not need to exist inside of Microsoft, and it is certainly that culture in part that Gabe Newell wanted to get away from, and that's where we got the company like Valve, where there's basically no competition at all, and so you're just constantly allow that Valve to continue to do whatever you want to do, for the most part, although we've heard some problems with Valve also. So I don't think either one of the strategies are great strategies. Hit that and hit this. Let's see if I can actually find the quote as far as response is, quote, "I discussed this thread with the senior leadership, with the bracket senior leadership team. Today, we are appalled and sad to hear about these experiences. It's very painful to hear these stories and to know anyone facing such behavior. At Microsoft, we must do better," which is generally the woke response that you have to give nowadays, is we must do better, we must do better, which maybe is true, but doesn't mean that they're actually going to act on it when anybody says that. The quote goes on, "I would like to offer anyone who's had such a demeaning experience, including those who felt dismissed by management or HR, to email me directly. I personally will look into the situation with my team. I understand the devastating impact of such experiences, and the STL wants to be made aware of any such behavior." STL, I guess, is their the name of their team. SLT? It's not STL, it's SLT. And we will do everything we can do to stop it. Done. I'm gonna be one short. Let's say the statement goes on. As mentioned earlier in the thread, Lindsay Ray, our Chief Diversity Officer, will be setting up sessions the week of April 22nd to ensure that we hear and are clear on the feedback and determine what initiative or programs to start based on the input from this community. Invites for these sessions will be sent to all women's community groups next week. It will accommodate multiple time zones, and joining Lindsay Ray will be Aaron. Joining Lindsay Ray will be Aaron Chappell, co-executive sponsor of Women's Community at Microsoft. While I do want to create a forum for the community on the thread, I also read and agree with the comments that for us to solve this as a company, the burden does not reside only with us women. While reading some of this is very disheartening, I'm proud and encouraged to see people empowered to speak up, say this is not right, and stand together for change. Thank you. That's the end of that comment. That's a nice long comment too. You don't get a lot of that these days. Usually it's always these short and sweet, we're looking into it type comments. I see the Bad Gamer is on the chat saying first. Hi, Bad Gamer 28. One thing I would say, as somebody who is an IT guy and even in jobs where I wasn't really doing IT, but was working with other females who were getting into IT or liked IT. Personally, and I think this is true for most IT guys, since we are generally speaking nerds and geeks and social introverts, a female interested in what we're interested in is like the golden goose, the unicorn. We want to treat those people so well. We want to be so nice. So it really goes to speak to how just aggressive and competitive and hostile it must be at Microsoft in particular, because there was definitely somebody who was just getting in IT. She was going into college, and I was like, this is great. Here's the help you need. If you need any, I've helped her with some of her assignments. If like once she asked me for help, and I'm like, here's what to do. I was, in my mind at least, 200% supportive of that. Like, I totally want to see more people who are interested in computer science and technology and stuff that are female to go into those fields. Although that is kind of a cursed hope, because it does mean you're going to be overworked and underpaid and underappreciated. That's just IT in general. But yeah. On the other hand, I worked a different job where I was replacing a female employee. This was a job that was a temporary project, and they claimed it was an IT job, but it really wasn't. It was more of a inventory management job. We were simply scanning hard drives and creating an inventory of what the serial numbers are on the hard drives, and kind of doing a little bit of what file system was on the hard drives, and that it was kind of a very pointless job, and so this was probably about, I would say 10 guys that had worked with this one female, and this female had been fired by the male guy for not really knowing what to do. And I think that from what I heard was probably accurate, that she literally did not like know how to use how to plug in the hard drives and stuff. That being said, by the time I got there, and it was all guys from that point forward for several months, that they seemed to exclude any female offers. Not that there probably are too many female jobs, or too many females looking for that kind of job. Like, plenty of idiots were allowed to be in that job. There was literally a self-confessed schizophrenic working in this job. Like, he had done a bunch of drugs and caused drug-induced schizophrenia, and had been incarcerated for schizophrenia, and he was allowed to keep the job. So maybe there is some sexism on the low end of jobs that pretend like they're IT, but I think more often than not, when you have people who are actually smart, people who are actually intelligent as far as IT and computers, they desperately want a female around. When you go look at the one of my favorite comedy series, the IT Crowd, the very first episode is just talking about how and showing how you have these two IT nerds that desperately need a female influence, just so that they know how to deal with people and not get punched every time they say something rude to end user. And they were constantly in the IT Crowd trying to find romantic interest of some sort. Although, I guess if they were going to do a new season of that, which will probably never happen for many reasons, they probably should have expanded it, because the female character, lead character, had lied about having IT experience, and so she really didn't know anything. So the twist there would be to throw out a new female lead character, adding to the group that was actually super smart and smarter than the guys, and thus intimidating them. But I'm getting kind of off topic, and we really don't have enough time for me to ramble. In the long run, yeah, that does not sound good for Microsoft. When you cite specific instances of being called the B word and having that be a consistently said thing, that is not good. I would also say that is a great example of how the right way to bring this to light, whereas there have been some other instances where I remember that that YouTube group, the Cinema Snob or Cinema Critic or whatever, and they put out this long like 28 chapter long email chain just complaining about every little thing, and it just kind of melded it and muddied the water so much that it's like nobody really cares, nobody wants to read this. Why don't you just talk about the big issues instead of bringing out every small grievance? Because they were complaining about things like, oh, we didn't get free lunch, and like, and that would be right next to things like, oh, we were fired for taking maternity leave. Like, those are big differences, and yeah. So keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it important. That Kotaku hit piece that happened about a year ago was written really badly, and it wasn't until probably 3 or 4 stories later that actual instances that I cared about of sexual harassment were mentioned, and it kind of muddied the issue for me too, where I'm like, oh, this just feels like a hit piece, and even now it still feels like a hit piece. There was some truth certainly in it, but it was written so badly and reported so badly at first. As the importance of getting the facts right, getting them straight, keeping them simple and easy to understand when reporting news. You don't want to just mudsling and throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, which seems like a lot of the Me Too era accusations are. It's not helpful. Let's see. Was there anything I needed to announce about the new expansion? Otherwise, no, I don't think so. Let's see, what are we trying to do right now? We're trying to get a victory for a mage or hunter, so let's just move over to mage and try that. I guess at this point I need to probably back off the idea of reporting every time Twitch support or any of or YouTube support puts something out, unless there's unless there's major issues. It seems like Twitch support in particular is gonna have little issues and then fix them and then have issues again. Like, security is important. Use a strong password with 2-factor authentication is a tweet they put out. So probably true. Yeah. And then most recently, we recently resolved an issue preventing first-time recurring subscriptions from being announced in chat or sent to third-party apps.
None will survive.
But this kind of is unimportant information. One of the bigger stories today, Gamma Sutra has it, one of them. BioWare GM internally addresses complaints from Anthem devs. BioWare issued a public statement around the time Kotaku's story on turbulent work conditions during the development of the latest release of its latest release. Anthem went live earlier this week, and BioWare General Manager
I'll never tell.
Sorry, gotta play. BioWare General Manager Casey Hudson has now sent out a lengthier email to BioWare staff addressing those same concerns. Email was obtained and reprinted in full by Kotaku. While the intent of the email wasn't likely to be shared publicly, the full text offers developers keeping up with the story additional background on BioWare's planned responses toward the grievances brought up in the Kotaku story, and where Hudson believes leadership can stand to improve.
What to do?
So, in the long run, what this kind of boils down to is, is that BioWare has been pushed and prodded certainly quite a lot. They have not been really given a chance to shine since probably Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 3 seems like it was cut short, at least at the end, because of crunch. And that's really all this, I think, is that it's just poor management and poor crunch as far as BioWare is concerned. Mass Effect Andromeda definitely was affected by low budget and crunch. And there's bigger issues and bad management and crunch. But in the short of it, Anthem is a bad game because Anthem was not given the time to be fully developed. They had no idea that it was going to be what it was going to be until a few months before it came out. It was just worked on by overexhausted people. And see, this is really ridiculous because you don't get better work from exhausted people. You absolutely don't. You would be much better as a video game industry. You would get better quality work, particularly in programming video games, which is more of an art than a science, if you had people working 30 hours a week than you would be having them work 60. Because that exhaustion just means you're making more mistakes then have to go be back and fixed. And so, yeah, just taking it easy and not being a overly demanding company could do a great deal to improve the quality of the game, which you need to have a good quality game because nobody wants to play Anthem because it's not a good quality game. And that, to me, seems pretty obvious from the first time it was announced to the point it was released. At no point did it feel like there was any story here. At no point did it feel like it was a unique, full of life, open world planet. At no point did it have any characters that were interesting. Like, Anthem might as well have just been a new Battle Royale game. It probably would have sold more and required less time to make. So you got to really do better quality here. Now, I will argue you can't become Valve. You can't have employees working 30 hours a week and not put any pressure on them to actually ever finish a product. But you can get pretty close to Valve without it being an issue. But yeah, that's about as much as I want to say on that story, I think. TechRaptor has the same article. I think we've reported this several times. GameStop reports huge losses after fiscal 2018 results. Not a huge surprise. Weird, though, that they did not in any way get more sales because Toys R Us was going out of business, or capitalize on that in any way. That always seemed weird to me. Moving on, we have a GameIndustry.biz article that I'm sure nobody's going to be happy to hear. Epic to continue signing exclusivity deals regardless of Steam plans. Tim Sweeney calls to switch exclusivity between stores must be up to developers and publishers. So I haven't heard of Steam actually announcing any plans or any idea about what they could do to actually stop exclusivity deals. Like, there's a couple things Steam could do, but they would be immediately potentially sued as a monopoly if they did do it. If Steam said, well, if your game goes on an exclusivity deal, we're going to remove all your other games from sale from Steam. That's about all they could do. The only other thing Steam could do is offer better deals for exclusivity, for non-exclusivity. That would really make Valve look so good if they said, actually, we're gonna give you a better cut so you aren't exclusive to the Epic Store. But almost certainly that's the whole reason why the Epic Store is doing this in the first place, is that they're trying to force Valve into giving a better cut that would hurt Valve in the longer run, and then the Epic Store might shut down or go into maintenance mode after that cut has been offered.
You asked for it.
And that's why Valve doesn't want to do that, because Valve says their cut is industry standard, and I kind of believe them. But not really any surprise in that story. Of course, the Epic Store is going to continuously try to get Epic Store exclusivity deals. That was obvious. That was completely obvious. So, no surprise there. Gamma Sutra has an article. Steam users review bomb Borderlands in response to the Epic exclusivity deal. Let's see. So, they're review bombing Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2, and the pre-sequel, with leaving the trio with mixed or mostly negative reviews. Let's see if we can actually see how this looks. A lot of the reviews posted ASCII art that depicts two hands flipping off the Epic Games Store. Interesting. So they're getting creative about it too, I guess. So, let's see. So right now, this is the Borderlands Game of the Year edition, which is the only edition here, and it is at mixed, where it was at very positive before. The Game of the Year edition replaced the original version, I assume, and so there's a lot of original version reviews, I would say, in this, which that in itself is a way that is manipulating the review system. And okay, here's the Epic Store middle finger. So yeah, they're making their voices heard. Play rightmost hand card in your hand.
The future is ours.
Let's hit this. So Borderlands Game of the Year edition and mixed. Here's Borderlands 2, which I guess is not really being sold as a Game of the Year edition only, but it is bundled. It's getting the Ultra HD texture pack for free. This is like the new thing that's been added. So I probably should make sure I install that. And you can see this is mixed too. And so the question would be, is Valve going to flag these, or when is Valve going to flag these? I don't see any middle fingers on this one though. As far as negative reviews, I would say putting middle fingers in Epic Store is not as helpful as it should be, as you might think it is.
Behold the tools of creation.
Like, you should instead write an actual review that that explains the situation and makes it obvious and apparent why people are dissatisfied with this game. Inherently, I think this might be a great example where Steam and Valve themselves should just make a page for Borderlands 3. And then say this page has been automatically generated by for Borderlands 3, so that people can negatively review Borderlands 3 for being on the Epic Store and ignore ignore putting negative reviews on Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2 that don't really deserve the negative reviews, other than the fact, and this is very arguable, that your experience of the Borderlands series in general is suffering because you can't play Borderlands 3 on Steam. So if you're coming into the Borderlands series saying, I want to play all the Borderlands games on the same platform, then your experience is you're gonna have that in the back of your head. You're going to have a lesser experience. And certainly that is even true for me, that if I start playing Borderlands the pre-sequel, I'm going to be a little bit depressed. It's going to be in the back of my head that, oh, I can't play Borderlands 3 the day it comes out. I have to wait 6 months. It's not going to really matter too much to me because I've got plenty of other games to play, but for people who just played Borderlands, which there was a decent amount of those when it first came out, that's pretty sucky. If that's the only game you wanted to play, that's not the experience you want. And arguably, I would say it's probably pretty easy to lower the Borderlands, the pre-sequel, to mostly negative instead of just mixed, because it has slightly fewer views. It is the most recent game in the Borderlands series, and frankly, even when the pre-sequel came out, people weren't super hot on it. It is by far the worst of the 3 Borderlands games, the main Borderlands games. Play that.
Job done.
And I don't see in this. Yeah, there's a texture pack for Borderlands the pre-sequel and Borderlands 2. I don't think that there's actually a texture pack, just a texture pack update for Borderlands 1. I think that game is completely changed, and there's something to be said about the fact that it is changed, because then that means that you're never going to have the ability to play the original game unless you can find an old version of the game and run it outside of Steam, like a cracked old version. You're going to play the new version, which probably isn't in every way better, but it's going to have shift keys, it's going to have new guns. I guess that's kind of true for any game, though. Whatever version you're given on Steam is the version you have to live with for the most part. Although maybe you can, maybe in the properties you can go back.
The future is ours.
Moving on, TechCrafter has an article, Islanders review if you're fond of sand, dunes, and salty air. This looks like a mobile game of no real interest. Interesting, they gave it a 9.0 amazing. Islanders is a deceptively simple puzzle game. You build little cities to score points. More importantly, it's absolutely perfect game for making beautiful, picturesque villages. You can fall asleep and dream about it. Pros, small combo, city building and puzzles. Fun new elements. Constantly introduce beautiful cons, sometimes too predictable.
What to do?
Interesting. Well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Islanders is something worth checking out.
They'll never know what I will tell.
Here, can we save myself some health? So here's this game, Islanders. It's rated very positively. It just came out, and apparently I missed it somehow. Maybe this makes sense though. Maybe a small sim city where it's just a small puzzle section instead of giant sim city or city simulation games where you have to do a lot of stuff might be the thing that interests would get me into those types of games as far as city builders. So I'm going to put this on the fall list. Islanders looks like it might be a new way to approach that.
Welcome to the show.
Let's see.
Time's up. Let's do this.
Let's see. And I think I just want to cover the news first, so I'm gonna skip a lot of games and move forward.
Spirit of the flames, turn them to ash!
Let's see. Secret. 2 damage this way. I'm gonna lose. Again. Gamatsu. Gamatsu has an article here. Remnant from the Ashes, Ruined Earth trailer. So perfect world entertainment and Gunfire Games have released a new trailer for a co-op shooter called Remnant from the Ashes. This game is due out for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC in 2019. I don't recall it. So, seems like it slid by. Remember, I'm playing ranked because I want to get up to at least rank 20. Let's see. Yeah, I think actually I have seen this game. It's probably not anything of any real interest. It's probably going to be a mediocre co-op shooter or whatever it was called. Whatever it said it was. Yeah.
For
It looks like it's probably going to be mediocre. Let's see. The Verge, it seems like I constantly end up getting more and more articles from The Verge and Variety too, for some reason. But The Verge has this article, creators find their second act with YouTube as employees. How can creators maintain career sustainability? For some, the answer is going corporate. So basically, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a small number of YouTubers who are really small YouTubers that then go work for YouTube. That would totally make sense. But you're not going to see PewDiePie as the CEO of YouTube. You're not going to see anything even close to that. So this article seems like quite a bit of a stretch, and I think it's probably a backward logic because recently, because of Creator Insider in particular and YouTube Help, which YouTube Help barely does anything at all as far as making YouTube videos. They have forced employees at YouTube to become YouTubers so that they can announce things and be more transparent. It's very much, they were employees at YouTube much more first, not YouTubers first. This article goes on and on. Personally, as a YouTuber, would I want to work for YouTube? Absolutely not. Like, talk about a nightmare. Maybe I would do it because I would have some hope that that might give me enough power to make some actual changes at YouTube and improve the situation. But I think I'm probably smart enough or jaded enough, depending on how you want to look at it, to know that if I was hired as a low-level YouTube employee, it wouldn't change anything at all. I would simply just continue to propagate the same old problems over and over again, and I wouldn't have any support or any way of changing anything. And so, yeah. Now, if somebody wanted to make me the CEO of YouTube, I would take that, certainly. If they want to make me upper management of YouTube, sure. But in the long run, well, on the other hand, I guess, now that I think about it, there is an argument to be said that there are too many crazy SJWs working inside of YouTube, so perhaps if we had some people who aren't crazy SJWs inside of YouTube, you could change the culture a little bit, and that might, in the longer run, affect things. Alright, now I need to challenge this guy real quick. Please respond. Please say yes. Please say yes. 80 gold. 80 gold for you. 80 gold for me. Come on, the new expansion's about to happen. You need that gold. Respond. Respond. Say yes. Moving on. TechRaptor has an article. Explore the majestic hinterlands of Norway in Dragon. This looks like it's probably a walking simulator. Apparently it's been kickstarted. No, it's from the Dreamfall, The Last Journey developers. Interesting. And there's a trailer here. Let's see. Are you gonna say yes, please? Alright, so we've got a trailer here. It's somebody in a boat walking around, basically doing the Gone Home thing. Seems like you might talk to other people and actually see other people in the game, but for the most part I think it is just another walking simulator. It doesn't look bad though. Dragon is coming to PC on Steam and Good Old Games on May 19th, 2019. Game industry. This guy is still not responding. He's just sitting there doing nothing. GameIndustry.biz. European has an article. European gamers show progressive streak on diversity. I believe this is actually not true, and this is basically yellow journalism. When we get into the survey, the IPSOS MORI survey shows that there's growing demand for a wider array of characters in games, although the industry still faces apathy. So the way I had seen this reported, that there was actually a higher percentage of people who didn't want more diversity than did. And you know what? Frankly, with the European issues taking in a lot of conservative refugees who are coming from extremely conservative anti-LGBT style religious beliefs. It's not surprising that Europe in general, as its population is changing by basic force, would go more conservative from where they were as far as being extremely progressive a few decades ago. Let's see. So there's a statement, games nowadays include a diverse range of characters, was agreed to by 43% of the respondents. It was also disagreed with by the smallest proportion of respondents by 10%. So this is basically how they manipulated the response, because clearly there was 40 or 37% of people that either remained neutral or said something else besides disagreed or agreed. Let's see. Let's see. 43% agreed. 46% said neither agreed nor disagreed, or admitted they didn't know, which was 16%. So 30% and 16%. Wow, he actually did agree to play me. That took him forever to say yes to that. He must have walked out of the room. So while 43% said agreed with games nowadays have a diverse range of characters, 46% said no, they don't. And you know what? That is right to that statement. There is a considerable number of games that barely have any characters in them, or they have very undiverse number of characters. You don't get a lot of Mexican characters. You don't get a lot of Middle Eastern characters. You don't get a lot of African ancestry characters. You don't get a lot of South American countries. I said Mexican, but let's just expand it out. You don't even really get a lot of Canadian characters in a lot of games. It usually is a lot of people that you would either say are American, United States, or Japanese, and that's pretty much it. You don't even really get a lot of like Asian characters. You don't get Taiwanese and Koreans and Indians or Pakistani characters. You don't get a lot of Russian characters, and if you do get Russian characters, they're usually mustache trolling bad guys. You don't, in most games, get a lot of European characters at all. And if they're European, they're usually British, which basically just gives them a funny accent. And when you get from the realm of reality to fantasy, then everything gets thrown out the window, because what is diversity in a fictional world? Like when you're playing Mass Effect and you see one Krogan looks like all the other Krogans, is that a tick up for being diverse, or is that a tick down because all the Krogans look the same? I think Krogans are in Mass Effect, or maybe I'm just making up a word. So yeah. And as far as female characters, there's still a large lack of the female gender in video games. It still feels weird to a lot of people to go into a first-person shooter and be shooting 50% male and 50% female. It even feels weird to me, and it would feel weird, I think, to most female players also. We will and are totally willing to have special enemies and special characters that are female, but it is closer to 30% than 50-50, like it should be. When you look at something like Left 4 Dead, there is the strong witch character, but then the rest of the vast majority of the zombies you're shooting in Left 4 Dead are male-looking zombies. There's also a lack of diversity as far as enemies in games, and that would feel weird also. If you were shooting extremely old zombies, people would probably have a problem with that. If you're shooting extremely young zombies, people may have a problem with that. In fact, one of the most recent zombie games that's about to come out, apparently has childlike infected enemies that they're not calling zombies, they're calling infected, but they certainly look like zombies to me. As far as things that aren't directly outward appearance, being transgendered or being half pre-op, post-op type things, a lot of that could be added to people's own headcanon if you wanted to, but that is, for the most part, you don't get into the backstory of a lot of the characters much anyway, so it's impossible to know how much diversity would be there. Let's see. This. Kill that. In a weird way, one of the most diverse games or game types you can play is Honey Pop, the match 3 dating game. While there's no guys that you can date in Honey Pop, every single female character is playing to a body type, a ethnicity type, a character type that is way more diverse, because in a sex/romance game, that's what you're looking for, that's the focus. In a first-person shooter or a PUBG Battle Royale game, that's not really what the focus is. And certainly you might get some backlash in many different directions. If you put a lot of African-looking characters in a first-person shooter, you get complaints against that. That's exactly what happened for Resident Evil 6, I believe, where you had Chris and Sheva in Africa shooting African zombies. So it's a damned if you do and a damned if you don't scenario, and video game developers have pretty much just opted to not have diversity, so there's no controversy to work about, and just have all the enemies be standard white male characters that you can shoot with no discomfort. Let's see. There's another quote in this survey from Europe. It says 30% of respondents agree games should have more female characters, but only 24% want to see more black and ethnic minority characters. So there's another number from where Europe is thinking. It is also worth mentioning that where the people of Europe is kind of a very different place than where the governments of Europe are. The governments in Europe, like the governments in most of the world, often seem like they've got their own head up their own butt, and they're doing something completely against the will of their own people. Let's see. The possibility of more LGBTQ characters actually reversed the trend, with 20% who want to see more falling below the 22 respondents who didn't. So they actually want to see less LGBTQ characters in Europe, and again, that might severely have to do with the migrant crisis of well, all the migrants from conservative countries and all the refugees coming from conservative countries integrating into societies. And let's face it, Russia, which claims that's part of Europe, and the Eastern Bloc countries have never been pro-LGBTQ, so they might be having an influence too. Now remember, this is just a friendly game, so it doesn't matter if I win or lose, I'm just playing. The statement, having more diverse characters would make me more likely to purchase, 22% agreed compared to 26% who disagreed. So more people are saying that they either don't care when making a purchasing decision, which frankly is the truth. I mean, when you're wanting to buy a game, you're kind of either buying it blind, or you know everything about it and how it plays and whether it's going to be fun. You don't really care if there's a character on it of a certain ethnicity or not. If people were so woke / SJW that they were just buying games with minorities in it, then everybody should be buying FIFA games and sports games, because there's plenty of minorities in sports games. See if there's any other quotes here worth mentioning. No. So it's kind of in our own survey, this Ipsos IP SOS Mori, MORI survey, shows that it's not really a major concern for the European market, which is probably the exact message that should be put out, quite frankly, because a lot of game devs around the world and a lot of people outside of the know of what's actually going on in the video game journalist world do listen to video game journalists who spout a bunch of garbage and a bunch of SJW lies. Yeah, I mean, it's just straight up lies about how you have to be woke, you have to be yeah. Oh, there's a bomb. This new bomb type cards are going to be really cool. Isn't this a new Rise of the Shadows card? How is he playing a Rise of the Shadows card? Did the expansion happen as I was streaming? We may have to look at this. And that's where you get scenarios where a bunch of Western American journalists are telling the Japanese developers of DOA that you have to have less boob physics and stuff like that. These bombs are gonna kill me. Or what was the most recent one on top of DOA that they're taking all the stuff out of Mortal Kombat 11. Now it looks like it is just this woke piece of junk fighting game, because all the outfits look horrible on the females, and they did nothing to change the outfits of the guys. Let's see. We have an announcement here Gamigo AG, acquisition of the game publisher Wild Tangent Incorporated in the form of an asset deal lands further profitable growth. Wild Tangent is... I know they make mobile games. I'm trying to think what mobile game they made. No. This is kind of like... This is what a press release looks like when people don't bother to write it up and actually make a story out of it. I really want to see this bomb happen, but I may win before that happens. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. Ubisoft ends production of the Starlink toys following poor sales. That was surprising. Here's the bomb. You take 5 damage when you draw it, but you don't draw another card, so the bomb is not as bad as some of the other things. Alright, so let's go in the shop and... No, let's see. That seems weird. So, bomb. If I can spell bomb right. And go into crafting mode. Summon 402 goblin bombs. Destroy a random enemy minion. Deal 2 damage, summon a goblin bomb. Deal 4 damage. Oh, I guess this was from what, Boomsday Project? Interesting. Shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck. When drawn, it explodes for 5. So there's some new cards in the next expansion that are going to have this effect. It seems like this card may have been changed or nerfed though, because like maybe it hasn't. I just don't think a lot of people have ever played that card. Well, the new expansion hasn't happened yet, so good. We're done with this. Let's move over to the Asian account. It was pretty obvious that Toys to Life was not going to get any bigger even when Starlink was first announced. The Lego Dimensions stuff failed, and that was the one that had the highest chance. Nintendo will continue to slowly do Amiibo stuff, but everything else has pretty much been failed and shut down completely. So yeah, Toys to Life is dead. Starlink was the last attempt at that, and I'm fairly certain that they were just too far in development. Ooh, I might have to play quite a few games here. Let's see. Well, Paladin, Hunter, and Mage. So unless we get a decent amount of victories real quickly. Yeah, Skylanders and Disney Infinity also failed. Starlink as a game I think will still be sold digitally though, but I doubt you'll see any more effort put into it.
Fight with honor.
Let's see. I don't know what I'm really doing, so we'll play here. TechRaptor has an article here. Prince Harry says Fortnite is addictive and shouldn't be allowed. Prince Harry is, I believe, approaching his 40s, so he's a little too young to be, well actually he might be even younger than that. He's a little too young to be taking such an old-fashioned approach to that. But he is also part of the British monarchy / government, and if Britain loves one thing, it is to overly oppress their own citizens and legislate things. And I imagine Prince Prince Harry is, well, how would we put this? Has some personal grievance against somebody playing too much Fortnite. What's funny is in this article it says he also called social media more addictive than drugs or alcohol, which is kind of surprising because I'm fairly certain he was caught doing drugs and alcohol in his youth. The exact quote here is, "A game like Fortnite, for instance, may not be so good for children. Parents have got their hands up. I don't know what to do about it. It's like waiting for the damage to be done and kids turning up on your doorsteps and families being broken down. Fortnite shouldn't be allowed. Where is the benefit in having that game in your household? It's created to addict, an addiction to keep you in front of the computer for as long as possible. It's so irresponsible." Some of that might actually be 100% accurate, you know? It's not
Reporting for duty.
it's not unbelievable to me if Fortnite was completely designed to addict people. But isn't that what all entertainment products are? Attempts to make people spend as much time. YouTube could be the exact same. You can make the same argument with YouTube. Meanwhile, there was just a science science investigation report publishing. That's what a published science journal is what I'm trying to say, that actually found no connection with mental health whatsoever and screen time in general. So all this hysteria of kids watching too much TV, which has been around for decades, and playing too many video games, which has been around for decades, and just playing on cell phones and stuff. There's been no connection whatsoever in this latest journal. So you have real scientists telling you it's fine, and then you have Prince Harry telling you it isn't. So kind of take your pick on who you want to believe.
I fight. I fight.
I think what you could also probably take from this idea, and what you should always look at with video games like Fortnite or not, it doesn't matter if Fortnite's a good game or not, as long as they're not out there spending real money, it doesn't matter. The more important thing is it's the normal thing. It's the thing all their friends are doing. If your kid is out there doing flossing dances and dabbing and playing Fortnite, they're doing exactly what their other stupid little kid friends are doing. And that's what they're supposed to be doing with their life. Is just being a normal kid growing up and learning just how to live life and get along with people. If you make it your goal in life to make your one child be ostracized and different from all the other kids, well, guess what? They're going to be ostracized and different from all the other kids, and then they're going to have extreme social anxiety, they're going to feel depressed, and they're not going to feel like a normal person. And that's much bigger of an issue. This TechRaptor article goes on to talk about how the World Health Organization is trying to classify gaming disorder as a mental condition, which is just, again, unscientific. I've been on that rant several times. There's no such thing as gaming disorder. You can't just create a disorder because you don't like something and it's politically helpful. And it's incredibly dangerous to call gaming disorder a real thing when it's very possible that then kids in China will get rounded up and sent to concentration camps or re-education camps claiming they have gaming disorder. A lot of kids very possibly never even playing a video game in their life.
Pinch of death cup. Heel of shoe.
So yeah, there's nothing really to that story. In the longer run, as a United States citizen, and let me encourage the people of the United Kingdom to stop listening and appreciating and frankly having the monarchy. They are nothing, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. I doubt very few UK citizens around the world actually believe that the monarchy was put there due to God's will, and that thus they are given any special authority or special rights. It's just, I doubt anybody really believes that these days. So get rid of your monarchy. They're not helping you, particularly you with the Brexit thing right now. Like, the monarchy could have stepped in and helped with Brexit many times. Instead, they're just staying completely out of it and allowing that mess to continue to happen. Let's see, what do I want to do? I'm just gonna, I guess, kill this one. And then I would kill that one.
For justice.
And then do that.
Job done. Reporting for duty.
Pinch of death cup, heel of shoe.
Moving on. TechRaptor has an article. Tim Sweeney changes Epic's tune. Will work with devs close to Steam release for exclusivity. I don't know how this is a changing his tune. Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney has backtracked on statements made by the company regarding exclusivity deals. The company has previously stated it didn't want to pursue exclusivity deals with games close to a Steam release, but Tim Sweeney is now saying otherwise. I think Tim Sweeney, in a nutshell, is the problem with the Epic as a company. Not just the Epic Store, but Epic in general. I think he is just a cutthroat jerk. Is pretty much all you can say about him. And his bad, unethical, in my opinion, business practices are the reason why maybe you shouldn't even use Unreal as your engine. On the other hand, if you're hamstrung like Anthem was and have to use the Frostbite engine, then you end up with a bad game, which was part of the main complaint about why Anthem was so hard to develop for, is that they were using their in-game engine instead of somebody else's engine. Like, it would be probably the best news ever if Tim Sweeney left Epic. Let's see, Leroy Jenkins. This. Hey, look at that. Victory. Nice, nice, nice. I didn't think I'd win there. Win streak bonus. Let's see. Next we have an article on TechRaptor. Etherborn is a mind-bending puzzle brain twister. Interesting. When is it coming out? No. This is probably a hype. It was previewed on PC Steam. The game will launch in the spring of 2019. It looks like it's kind of cool.
You asked for it.
Looks like there might be something here, but no reason to get hyped about it yet. Let's see. GameIndustry.biz has an article here. CVG team reunite for new games media website. Video Game Chronicle launches this month. The former team behind CVG. I have no idea what CVG is. Have reunited to do Video Game Chronicles.com, the new website. What is CVG? Maybe I've heard of Paul Davies, but I don't think I know any of these other people. Its parent company Future, it was closed by a parent company called Future.
Reporting for duty.
So some website somewhere, some video game journalist website got shut down and now they're coming back. So what? There's a whole long list of companies like that where things like that have happened recently. YouTubers and such. So I guess that's a non-story unless you know who CVG is. I don't know if this is a real story either. TechRaptor has an article. This War of Mine has sold over 4.5 million copies. Seems like a lot, frankly. And it seems like the publishers / developers of this War of Mine has a very good handle on continuously getting their game in the news media. Like, it doesn't go but a few months before they've got some new thing they're doing around that game. Whether it's a charity giving away money to Operation War Child, which they seem to do once a year, or some new DLC or something. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Life is Strange developer Don't Nod has 2 more unknown games in development. I looked on the front page of Steam and saw that Life is Strange 2 is like on discount right now, and I don't even have it on my wish list. And I'm just kind of in this weird position, I suppose, where I don't think I'm ever going to play Life is Strange Before the Storm, and because of that I don't think I'm going to really ever get around to playing Life is Strange 2. I think I'm just giving up on that series, which is an example of a game that is kind of highly relevant. It gets talked about enough and reported enough by at least video game journalists that it feels like I should be covering it, but I'm just kind of like, no, I've got other games. I've got more interesting games. I didn't like the way Life is Strange 1 was kind of this non-entity of a game, and didn't really thrill me with its time rewinding puzzles as much as I thought the game was going to be. And the way in later chapters it stopped being time rewind puzzles so much as other things.
I'll never tell.
Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here. Warhammer Vermintide 2 PS4 and Xbox One physical editions are launching June 11th. This is interesting because Warhammer Vermintide 2 has been out for quite a while. Let's see if there's a release date that's mentioned here. Like, no release date as far as when this came out digitally, but it's been out for several months, I'm fairly certain. Okay, counterspelled.
I fight.
What a bother.
There we go. See if this. Next, we have a TechRaptor article. Mr. Driller PS1 Classic Edition has been delisted from the North American PlayStation Network store. I don't know why that would be the case. Maybe a new version is going to be listed. The game was previously available for purchase for $5.99.
Let me think.
And anyone with a PS3, PS Vita, or PSP could download and play the game. Maybe this is the beginning of seeing games that are for the PlayStation 3, Vita, or PSP are going to be delisted. PS1 classics aren't playable on the PS4. Okay, that makes sense. So they're not making Vitas anymore. They're not making PSPs a long time ago, and they're not making PlayStation 3. So the PlayStation Network is seemingly going to slowly become only for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a decent amount of games disappear real fast, and then a whole new re-release of virtual console-like versions of those games that are just being run through emulation, or maybe the PlayStation Network doesn't even care. Alright, so now I need Hunter and Mage victories. We got our Paladin victories. Hunter and Mage victories. If you have a Japanese PSN account, you can still grab the game. It may be that Mr. Driller lost its license faster than anything else, but I don't really know why Mr. Driller would be too hard to license in the first place. Probably didn't make that much sales in the first place. Okay. Let's start with that and that. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be playing. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Anti-gravity combat racer Formula Fusion has been rebranded as Pacer and is coming to the PS4, Xbox One, and PC in 2019. I think I've seen this game before. It's not out yet, so there's so many games that could come out that are racer fighting games to confuse it with. So we need to kind of wait until it actually comes out to be interested in it. Let's see. Do that. TechRaptor has an article. Assassin's Creed Odyssey patch 1.2 goes live today. Fate of Atlantis is coming soon as the next bit of DLC. It's kind of interesting they're going to call it Fate of Atlantis, since there's a famous point-and-click adventure game that's on Steam called Indiana Jones and Fate of Atlantis. But okay. So Assassin's Creed Odyssey in particular is in a weird position. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with the Assassin's Creed series. I think in a lot of ways I'm just gonna probably give up on it and maybe play other games for a while. Just take a break from Assassin's Creed. There's still plenty of them for me to play, and I have plenty of them, but because of the Assassin's Creed 3 remastered issue, let's see, what can we do? We can do that. We can do that. We can end the turn. Yeah, I don't want to buy the remastered version of Assassin's Creed 3, so if I'm going to cover Assassin's Creed 3, it's going to be the original version, and then that's going to be weird. Right. Here we go.
I hunt alone.
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Dragoon for PC launches in May. Story trailer. We already talked about this game, though. Dragoon. Looks like it's a walking simulator of sorts. Looks pretty good. Interesting. And there's an actual human character, so part of the things that make walking simulators is you don't bother to animate any humans. So if you're actually seeing humans, at that point it really becomes an adventure game. Because you're doing more than walking, you're also talking to people, and you're dealing with conversations and potential dialogue puzzles and any number of other things. Darn it. How am I gonna kill this guy? I want to silence him. Moving on, we have an article on Gematsu. Where is my mouse? Here. We have an article on Gematsu. Fury Freedom Update is now available with an invincible mode and a speed run in Furier, which is, I guess, a new game plus, and more. So, I've been watching a YouTuber play Fury, and I've really wanted to play it. It looks like it might be a game that's super hard and would drive me crazy, but an invincibility mode sounds great. Apparently different versions are getting different things. So I guess probably the best version is the Steam version in the definitive edition, but it seems like there's a lot of craziness. So yeah, there's a trailer here. I'll take a look at it and see if it points anything else out.
Quickly.
Okay. Let's hit this and do this and do this and in the turn. And the trailer doesn't want to play. So okay. So yeah, I'm a little bit more hyped to want to play Fury, F-U-R-I, Fury. But it's not like it's a brand new game anyway, so there's plenty of time to get around to playing that. Oh, that discarded his other card. That is great. Right. So, this, and then this, and then this, and let's see. One here. And what I want to do, get rid of these guys. Let's leave them. Let's see. Gematsu has another article. Korean studio Shift Up announces an Unreal Engine 4 based action game called Project Eve, which I'm fairly certain there was already a game called Project Eve, or maybe I'm thinking of Parasite Eve. Anyways, Project Eve is for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. It's now recruiting developers. And boy, does this look like a Korean character if I've ever seen one. I'm not 100% sure why Korean games love to show a lot of skin, but they seem to do it. I don't know how that works in their culture, but maybe it's just even less of a big deal than it is in Japan. Alright, so all I need to do is end my turn. As long as explosive trap works. And there's a teaser trailer here. 2 minutes and 30 seconds for it. Really all I imagine is going to show off is that the Unreal Engine 4, when properly used, can animate something very pretty. And I would argue that Project Eve in a lot of ways is kind of not even as polished as it could be for Unreal Engine 4. And there is something to be said about having a, well, here, let's show this. So here's the female character, and here's like a giant plant or worm like robot getting teased. There's something to be said about having a specific version of, let's see, how do I want to do this? A specific version of Unreal Engine mentioned, because like 4.22 seems like it's a pretty big jump from the previous version of 4.13 or whatever the previous version of maybe 4.21 even. Like, it seems like, particularly for Unreal Engine 4, a lot of stuff is being added with ray tracing, and adding ray tracing does have the opportunity to show a lot of stuff. Okay, can I do anything more? No, I'm gonna lose, so I have to do this. Seriously? Seriously, I did more damage to myself than anybody else.
Nicely done. Your suffering will be legendary.
If I actually win here, I'll be extremely surprised. Yep, still lost. Didn't matter, still lost. It doesn't really matter though. We just want to get these ranked victories. So we're playing Hunter and Mage, so let's keep it interesting and switch over to the Mage. I may play a little bit off screen today just to save times. GameIndustry.biz has an article. Where's my mouse? Here it is. Why life after Dead Cells does not mean growth. Motion twins Steve Philby and Sebastian Bernard talk co-ops and explains why the studio will remain small after the roguelike's success. Now, I would argue, or question at least, is Dead Cells done? Or is it still in early access? Here's a quote: "We needed to sell 20,000 copies in the first 3 months. We had no idea we were going to do that in the first day." So yeah, Dead Cells, huge success, but they're doing what I would say is the absolute right thing, and taking their time and not growing too fast and then failing because of being overburdened by growth. I imagine the two people in this two-person company, which it seems like it is, probably have no idea how to hire employees or manage employees or anything like that. And they probably just want to continue to work together to make good games. And if it took two of them to make Dead Cells, and Dead Cells is a great game, apparently, says everybody that I've heard, then why change it? Why add more people? Sometimes adding people makes games worse. EA has hundreds, if not thousands, of employees. That doesn't mean EA games got better. Next we have an article here. This is slightly interesting. GameIndustry.biz meet 100 of the most influential women working in the UK games industry. Apparently this is a sponsored article. Frankly, I couldn't name 100 females in general that work in the video game industry at all. So it almost seems like anybody who nominated their names, well, they received 450 names in nomination. So they boiled it down from 450 to 100. But I imagine if I were to go through this list, this really is going to be just a list of people like I have no clue who they are. And that would be the same if this was a list for the 100 most influential men in video game, in the UK video game industry in particular also. So, like, if we just scroll through A through B, we have someone who works for a company called Soundcuts, never heard of it. Someone who works for a game called US2 Games, never heard of it. We have a marketing specialist, someone who works for Media Molecule. I have heard of that company, but I haven't heard of Alex Perry. Someone who works for Rock Paper Shotgun. I think this list is immediately thrown out the window because of that. When you're mixing video game journalists with video game employees, this list has no valid. Like, it really has no validity at all in my mind. I think this is kind of clearly a list of also like publishers and HR people and managing director and product owner of Paper 7. They really stretched the definition to list as many females as possible. This isn't a bad thing. Here's another one from Eurogamer, another journalist. It's not really a bad thing in the long run. We probably should celebrate more people in the video game industry and say, actually, yes, this person does deserve more of a highlight and recognition, but that's certainly not the way things work in video games as an industry. It's fairly obvious that most video game developers are nameless. Even if they aren't nameless, they a lot of times are going by fake names or something else, some nickname. And while we do know, like, Miyamoto, the developer of Mario, we don't know anybody that really works under Miyamoto. And he's probably the one of the few exceptions of male video game developers that I could name by name. I'd probably recognize a lot more names. An argument certainly also could be made that this is an example of a lack of professionalism. Like, maybe we should, as consumers, think of video game developers as, you know, a Mr. type person, like a Mr. Miyamoto, instead of thinking of him as somehow our best friends that we've never actually met or interacted with, which I think a lot in journalism, in video game journalism, that is a problem too. Is there's just this feeling out there that that people who make video games are your best friends, and people who make video games often encourage that, and it destroys that level of professionalism that should be between a journalist and a game developer, and there should be a level of professionalism between a consumer and a game creator too, and that often gets eroded. A lot of creators of different things have gone to events, cons, and end up hugging on and kissing and taking selfies with fans. Perhaps there should be a level of professionalism that the cons come in and say, no, you can't do that for any of them. Even one of the U.S. presidential candidates or potential presidential candidates for next election is getting derided for violating the personal space of other people and making them feel uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to get insanely puritanical, but there might be an argument to say, yeah, you should keep a healthy distance between a lot of creators and not know their names and not care about them. It's not like I particularly read or watch the credits in video games or care. I know, for example, in Borderlands, I know way more about Randy Pitchford, the CEO, who really didn't program any of Borderlands, as far as I can tell, than I do about any other designer, developer, programmer that worked on Borderlands. And maybe I shouldn't know anything about Randy Pitchford, too, but that seems like that's probably the level of enjoyment most people should take it at. In the same way that most people go to movies and they don't watch the credits or read the credits, and they don't care who worked on the credits. Maybe they care about the director, and that's about it. Moving on, Gematsu has an article here. Eve burst error R voice drama videos. Scenes that previously lacked voice acting, now with voice acting. The game I'm playing now, Destiny Child, is weird in that it adds Japanese voice acting to the game, even though it's in English. So you'll often see cases where they're saying something slightly different or completely different in Japanese, from what I can tell. My almost non-existent understanding of the Japanese language, and the English translation is just going in kind of a completely different direction with it. But it's still kind of fun to hear the voices and hear them talk, even if I don't understand what they're saying, instead of just sitting in silence and looking at a bunch of text and reading a silent visual novel. Which Destiny Child is not a visual novel, but it has elements that are kind of like that. Moving on, Gematsu has an article. Octopath Traveler rated for PC in Korea. This Octopath Traveler was released for the Switch in 2018. If it comes to PC and Steam, I might be willing to play it because a lot of people seem to really like it. And it would be a kind of like the first in a series game, so there's not a bunch of other game characters or games before Octopath Traveler that I would have to play. Alright, let's start with this, and then hope it does this, I guess. And hope it does this. So yeah, that would be really cool, but this, I guess, is at best a rumor right now. Maybe next week we'll be talking about how it's confirmed that Octopath Traveler has come to PC and Steam. It'd have to come to Steam though, and not just some other PC platform. Right. Play this. Do this. Do this. Intro. Next, Gematsu has an article here. Hideo Baba leaves Studio Istolia and Square Enix. Baba's plans for the future are unknown. So this is another high-level Square Enix employee who has left Square Enix. Japan in particular, with the first one being the guy in charge of Final Fantasy 15. So I wouldn't be surprised if Baba is going to join the developer of Final Fantasy 15. I could have won that turn if I had just been able to do 2 more damage. Baba is known for his past works as in the Tales of series, Tales of Vesperia and such. So he became the president of Studio Istolia to work on a project codenamed Project Prelude Rune, which was confirmed in September 2018. I assume he's either close to being done with that game or doesn't care and is abandoning that game. So that might be the end of official Tales of series with him gone, and we may start to see spiritual successors of the Tales of series, which might make a good point to might be a good point to try to play all the Tales of series. I don't think they're bad JRPGs by any means, so if that series is coming to an end and a close, that would be cool, because then I know there's a definitive end and it won't just go on forever. Although only in JRPGs would that be a good thing. Like I wouldn't care if they made 10 more Borderlands games over the next few decades, but I kind of would like to see JRPGs have a wrap-up point. Man, I kind of can't have this in my hand, but I kind of want this in my hand. TechRaptor has an article here. We Happy Few, they came from below review. Am I the Monster? This is a DLC for We Happy Few where you're playing, I think, as these 2 sailors. And it seems like you're going to get new guns and new missions. And I guess this was the picture that was teased to be released at Square Enix. And actually that picture was not mentioned at not at Square Enix, at PAX. Like this picture was kind of zoomed in and teased at PAX, and then it doesn't happen. That probably has something to do with robots. Anyways, TechRaptor gave this DLC 7.5, very good. Summary: they came from below, focuses on We Happy Few's greatest strengths and really shines because of it. While its short length and weird quirks hold it back from true greatness, this is probably the best thing to come out of Wellington Wells yet. So, okay. They finally put out a piece of content for that game that's slightly interesting. Do you really want to wade through the vast majority of the game to play that small amount? They might as well, if that was going to be the case, they might as well have just had it be a standalone expansion that doesn't require the main game. The pros, according to TechRaptor, is its focused arcade-style gameplay, great writing and storytelling, and lack of technical issues, which there was tons of technical issues in the main game. The cons are first-person platforming, short length that packs too much in, and static character models. Well, maybe one day the We Happy Few will be a good game, but I doubt it. I think it's going to be abandoned before that would happen. So, Wandering Monster. Change the health to 1. Activate secret. Interesting. This next article is from GameIndustry.biz. Future recognizes staff union. The publisher voluntarily recognizes organized employees of PC Gamer, Games Radar, and 9 other publications. Now here's the thing about this, and this is kind of insane because it's basically a bunch of video game journalists have decided to unionize themselves, but there really wasn't any management to speak of. I guess there was Future, but I bet Future was barely 5 or 10 people, and I bet they're all good friends with each other. So it seems like this is, instead of probably a bad company that needed a union for forming a union, it's probably kind of a virtue signaling attempt at showing video game companies that they can form unions, because this collection of video game journalist sites, which there's a big difference between the two, has made a union. Inherently, a union for a bunch of video game journalists is kind of useless because, frankly, video game journalists are very useless. As someone who might be called one himself, like, you could fire everybody at PC Gamer, Games Radar, whatever. You could fire them all. You could replace them with hundreds of other people willing to write video game reviews just fine. There's not too much special going on for any of the people there. And frankly, it probably would be a good thing if you did fire them all. If all the people at PC Gamer and Games Radar got fired. So I imagine if this were a true union, the way it's supposed to be, I'd imagine there was a manager at Future that has to stay outside of the union, and then every single other employee is in the union, and they're all good friends, and it doesn't matter, and it's never going to come up. There's never going to be a union dispute. There's never going to be a strike. There's never going to be bargaining for more pay or better work conditions, because frankly the pay and the work conditions for video game journalists are going to stay exactly the same as they always are. In a lot of ways, this is also an example of just kind of cronyism in a sense, because it's more journalists getting together and talking to each other and deciding what the narrative is going to be for that day. Let's see. Let's do this. So the Future Union represents the US-based writers, editors, photographers, videographers, and copy editors and social media staff for 11 Future publications, including PC Gamer, Games Radar, as well as Tom's Guide, Tom's Hardware. I thought it was called Tom's Hardware Guide, but I guess maybe there's two different things. Tech Radar, and Laptop and Mag. I imagine there is a possibility that this will either lock pay down for all the employees at those companies so that they don't get any amount of raises that they would have gotten before, or worse, it actually ends up lowering their income in different ways and increasing their hours. That would be the ultimate irony, and that almost certainly would never get reported on, because then you'd be speaking out against your union. But yeah, that would be kind of the ultimate irony, is that this is, and I'm not like an anti-union guy in general, I just think that particularly in this case, you're in a dying industry. Unionizing is not going to save you from a dying industry in the same way that the auto union is not going to save the auto industry in the United States. The only thing that would save the auto industry in the United States would have been, well, frankly, major tariffs on all foreign cars, and better management of the auto industry in general. Moving on to the next article. We're just gonna have a ton of games, I think, on Monday. And I'm not gonna break up this recording again. I tend not to break up recordings when we're when streams we have to stream a bunch because there are extra streams. Alright, what do I want to do? Just in the trend. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Valve argues it should be excluded from EU geo-blocking accusations. Valve has fired back at today's geo-blocking accusations from the European Commission, saying that, in short, Steam as a platform can't be held responsible for any alleged geo-blocking by the developers and publishers it provides keys to. Now, inherently, these accusations on the face of them sound like it is the European Union trying to have its cake and eat it too, because Germany in particular is one of the hardest countries to get a game listed. If a game is not listed, it can't be sold, as I understand it, or at least it couldn't be for the longest time. So there definitely were games that were not allowed to be sold in Germany, which is part of the European Union, and thus had to be geo-blocked. For them to come back as the European Union and say, well, all European Union citizens deserve are legally entitled to the same deal and the same offering that all other European Union citizens get, or I think they may even go further than that claim. It's not a fair legal argument. It's a catch-22. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. This article continues. The European Commission has been working on a years-long investigation into a number of game companies that allegedly geo-blocking or restricting game sales by region in a way to prevents international sales between European Union countries. Part of that is also, I think, how people manipulate the Steam store and get games cheaper than they should due to the local currency issues. And also, a big part of this is just the European Union is definitely more than happy to find any United States or not European Union company guilty of anything and everything so they can just fine them and get more money out of them. Seems like the European Union is out of any new ideas, so they're just going to legislate success and profit to their countries. At least when you talk about China, China actually has the Tencent store and Weimu or whatever it's called, and they're actually trying to compete instead of just 100% control things by law. The Commission announced its objections to Valve, Bandai Namco, Capcom, Focus Home, Koch Media, and ZeniMax. That they're saying they're in breach of EU competition rules. And eventually, I think we are going to run into a point where just all like every single company just stops doing business officially in the United States. I mean, in the European Union, because they're becoming a huge pain in the butt to do business in. Article 13 and all of that aside, let's see. The European Commission's accusations state, among other things, the 5 publishers mentioned earlier entered an agreement with Valve to use geo-blocked activation keys to prevent cross-border sales of select games on Steam, something which the Commission says may have prevented consumers from buying games for a lower price in other European Union member states. As quote, however, the EU charges do not relate to the sale of PC games on Steam, Valve's gaming service, reads the statement from Valve. Such keys allow a customer to activate and play the game on Steam when the user has purchased it from a third-party reseller. Valve provides Steam activation keys free of charge and do not receive any shares of the purchase price. I did not realize that they did that for free when this game is sold. So Valve is basically saying, hey, this isn't us. That's actually third-party selling sites, so we can't really do anything about that. That's the publisher's deal, not ours. The article goes on, the region locks only applied to a small number of game titles, approximately just 3% of all games using Steam, and none of Valve's own games at the time were subject to contested region locks in the EEA. Valve believes that the EC's extension of liability to a platform provider in this circumstances is not supported. So basically it's a bunch of legal arguments to say, hey, we're not even involved here, so leave us out of this, which might be a fair argument and might not be. Let's see. I gotta wait till 10th turn to play this anyway, so next turn we'll see what happens. So yeah, every American, every company, Valve, Google, Microsoft, all of them seem to constantly be getting accused of things by the EU. Seems like it's only EU. You don't really hear these stories from any other organization or country, really. So I think it's probably a statement on just how the EU is being run like a totalitarian dictatorship, and there's definitely some danger of the world they want to create being extremely fascist. Let's see. Moving on, we have a story on Gamma Sutra. Jam City acquires the Berlin-based studio 231 Play. I haven't heard of either one of these companies, but I think Jam City might own something pretty big. 231 Play has a game called Game Doctors, which was acquired by Zynga and Zombie Smash. That's kind of a no-name names. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article. Maybe I should move over to casual here. Gamma Sutra has an article over here. Get a job. Square Enix, DeepMind, and more are hiring now. So there's an experienced game developer in Square Enix in Tokyo, Japan, a junior programmer in Cambridge, Massachusetts for Disbelief, an instructor in residence of game design at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, a lead quality assurance tester in a company called Embodied in Pasadena, California, a game systems engineer at DeepMind in London, England. So, a large collection of games there. And those who can't teach, so maybe go to Bradley University if you can't actually develop games. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has a similar article to what we'd already talked about. Microsoft's new Windows 10 games bar updates takes cue from NVIDIA and Discord. No pictures, unfortunately, to show. And that would have been the thing that I would have liked to see. I haven't covered a single game that came out. Gamma Sutra has the previous article, EU investigating Valve and 5 major publishers for illegal geo-blocking. This is a problem of being a global economy and global world, isn't it? All these companies end up getting subjected to conflicting and unfair laws. GameIndustry.biz has the same article. Hideo Baba departs Studio Historia, Square Enix. Nothing new in that article. GameIndustry.biz has an article here. Team Meat delays Super Meat Boy Forever to maintain, quote, a healthy and sustainable pace. Studio opts not to run ourselves into the ground to finish the game, but by the previously announced April release. Cool idea. I think all game developers should probably start taking that attitude of just, it's ready when it's ready. We're not going to rush ourselves. If we have to push back a release date, we'll push back a release date. I'd like to see all video game designers stop announcing release dates until the game is already done. That would be helpful. But heck, they're getting better at least. AMD and Gearbox work together to make sure that Borderlands 3 will run on Ryzen processors. That's nice to hear, I imagine, for anybody with an AMD processor. But in all fairness, I seriously doubt you should ever buy an AMD processor if you want to be in the gaming. It still should be Intel all the way, and I'm not sure if that's ever really going to change. That may just have to be the standard for all eternity. Like, I would 100% suggest an Intel processor and an NVIDIA graphics card. Let's see, I got the same stories over and over again.
They'll never know what hit them.
Let's see. Oops, I should have used the hero ability. Well, need that for sure. TechRaptor has an article here. Chucklefish published strategy title Pathway launches next week. Haven't heard anything about this game Pathway. It's kind of odd that there would be a game that is coming out next week and nothing has been said about it. Seems like it's kind of a rogue-like game, top-down twin-stick shooter type rogue-like. I might be willing to give this a chance, but there's a lot of issues with it from what I see. The fact that it's a looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter and has 8-bit graphics is in part going to turn me off from a game like that. GameIndustry.biz has an article. Microsoft increases the Xbox Live Gold price in the UK. A 12-month subscription goes from £39.99 to £49.99 to quote address changing market conditions, aka Brexit. So I also think I saw an article that said that Xbox Live Gold and Xbox Games Pass are getting merged, so let's see if we can find that one while we're here. Let's see, this and this.
The gates are open.
for duty.
See, this is a weird one too, because I had talked about how it would have been probably a smart move for them to have brought out a bunch of a bunch of cosplayers during the announcement of Borderlands 3 and just say, hey, this is we should, how do I want to play this? 2 or 2? Let's do this.
The eternal hunt has begun.
So, yeah, with the announcement of Borderlands 3, during all those technical problems and during the announcements, instead of having Randy Pitchford on the stage doing magic tricks, why not have a bunch of cosplayers? So then we have this casting call that has come out since that point, where they are calling Vault Hunter cosplayers. They're looking for somebody who would dress as Ellie, Sir Hamlock, and Tannis. Let's see.
Reporting for duty.
Seems like they're not asking for too much here, but they're also looking for professional cosplayers. So I would imagine if you've never cosplayed before in your life, this is probably not the time, not the one that they would want you to do. So, but if you have been paid before the cosplay and you can play those characters and want to play those characters, I imagine they're also not looking for any crazy genders swapped or completely out of your body style. So Ellie is probably going to need to be someone who can at least play very big, if not somebody who is actually very big.
Reporting for duty. Ready for action.
I don't know what this article is about that TechCrafter has, but it seems to be just an interview. And I don't even know if it's from an interview of a game developer, but it doesn't seem to be that important. Alright. Alright. Kill. That. Play that. And random enemy minion. I'm like one short.
Easy target. Senseless fate.
Pass me that arc light spanner.
The victory.
Well, at this point, the problem here is we'd have to start covering games because I've run out of space. And what do we need to do? We need to play one more game. So let's just start. We'll just work our way backwards, I guess. And start looking at games on Steam. We have a game on Steam here called Killer Chambers, which looks like it's a roguelike dungeon crawler. Now I'm not supposed to actually, I was hoping not to see games that are actually good, but yeah. This is not a top-down game. It's just really small squares. Interesting. $4.49 though. It looks like you're just doing a lot of jumping and dodging, and that would drive me crazy. I'd spend like 5 minutes on something like this and that would be it. This clearly is one of those games that's designed to frustrate you to death. So yeah, that's not going to the wish list. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Gems of Magic Lost Family, which just is a match 3 game. That's not going to the fault list. $3.99 discounted.
Greetings, traveler.
Let's see.
Quickly. Greetings, traveler.
Next we have a troll game on Steam called Chaos Starter, which is just a bunch of asset flips and ridiculousness for 84 cents discounted. That's, of course, not going to the list. See, I'm trying to skip anything that might actually be worth talking about. Let's see. Let's just do that, I guess.
Job's done.
Next we have a game on Steam called Not My Car, which probably is an asset flip racing game. It's already mixed reviewed. Early access, free to play. So yeah. I hope we're close to the end of the news. TechRaptor has an article here. Coverage Club Final Fantasy VII on Switch is the best played on the go. So does this give an actual review? No. I don't know if you really would want to play Final Fantasy VII though, frankly. It's a little questionable to me whether it's worth the effort to play the original when you kind of know that there's a new version in development, a remastered version, and even then it's going to be an old game and just barely remastered, so I'm not sure if that's really worth the effort. Next we have a game on Steam called Static, which looks like it might be something. It's not very polished in its visual aesthetic, and it does seem like you're just kind of wandering around a futuristic world with no enemies or interaction points. $4.99. I think this deserves to be on the follow list though. Speaking of games that might have deserved to be on the following list if it wasn't mixed already, we have Vanguard Normandy 1944, which looks like it's a pretty good military shooter, but it's early access for $12.24 and it's already mixed, which I guess maybe that I'll give it a bigger chance. It's weird going backwards on this. Next we have a game on Steam called Pineview Drive Homeless, which I think is a VR horror game with dark screenshot syndrome. It actually doesn't look too bad. $16.19. I'm gonna give this one a chance to. Man, I'm probably a little exhausted mentally, and thus I'm going to give games more of a chance than they deserve. Hit this, and then hit play this, and then continue. Point is to close tabs, and if I'm going to put it on the follow list, then I'm not closing tabs, am I? Next we have a game called Snowball Rush. I think this is probably an uninteresting game. On the other hand, geez, I might actually give this one a chance too. What's the price on this? 99 cents? Let's see this video. No, this would be too simplistic, though. The idea of being a snowball person, making yourself a snowball and going down the hill is slightly interesting, but you would need more variety and more things to crash into, and not just different skins. And that seems like that's all this is offering. 99 cents with no discount.
Job's done.
Next we have a game on Steam called The Mistress of Maid's First Castle, which is a free-to-play roguelike, it says. And it looks like it's an RPG Maker looking game to me. Yeah, this art in this thumbnail is quite deceptive. Free with no in-game options. So I guess you can play it. It's English and Russian, and I wonder if it might be a bit of a Russian troll game. Also, this publisher I think is a kind of bad publisher. If I recall correctly, I might be wrong about that. This game actually doesn't look terrible for free. It might really be worth it. Discover secret. And misdirect. And do that. And just kill that. Next, there's a game on Steam called Below that's rated mostly positive, although over its lifetime it's mixed, which looks extremely dark. That's all I can really tell from it. Is like it looks really dark. It says it's a roguelike. I'm gonna have to give this one more time to figure it out. $24.99 is quite a high price also. Let's see, summon 4 wolves.
I hunt alone.
Attack here.
Job's done.
Yeah, unless I could do like 20 damage in the next turn, I'm probably gonna lose. Nope, I'm gonna just lose right now. Okay. Alright, well, at this point, I'm pretty exhausted. In the past couple of weeks, I've been pretty exhausted in general just playing Hearthstone. I need to get one more victory here, and I think that's kind of all I need to do. I don't think my timer has been working, because I think that stopped a long time ago and I dismissed it. So we've just had like one long 3-hour stream, and yeah, there might be a little bit more news, but I don't think there's anything big to mention. And if I find any news, I'll just save it for Monday. I'll go through all of the Steam games and we'll deal with that stuff too. Unfortunately, I can't Alt-Tab to bring up OBS, so we'll have to end here. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good